Welcome everybody to this session, Automated Fulfillment Network in a Network Zone Consortia. This is Yoel Cortex, Senior Librarian at Ex Libris, and we have a special guest lecturer today, Mr. Moshe Schechter from Alma Product Management. Moshe, thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. We're also joined by Maud Arnaud from the Alma Product Management as well. And before we actually jump right in, someone just asked about the slides. So that brings me to my next topic. This is the page, the Alma Network Zone Consortia webinar series. I'm going to send this out in the chat, the link to this, though I know most of you, if not all, already have it because we saw that people registered from this page. Those of you watching this via YouTube can see the link to this in the description of the video. And we hope to see you live next time, not just via YouTube. So all of the presentations, someone asked where they can get the presentations. All of the presentations are linked here in the accompanying resources column. For example, last time we did the Alma Collaborative Network and the shared cataloging of the Network Zone Consortia. We have the presentations here. We have the recordings here in the recording column. And for today's session, we already have the slides here. And shortly, once we have the recording, first we need to do the session, then we'll have the recording. We'll have that here in the recordings column. The recording will be on YouTube, on the Ex Libris YouTube channel. It will also be accessible via the Education Webinars page. And I'll be sending out a message to the Alma list stating that that recording is ready. So I just want to make sure everybody is aware of the various sessions we've got. You may have only heard about this current session. We have a whole webinar series here called the Alma Network Zone Consortia webinar series, specifically geared for users in a member institution of a Network Zone Consortia, as it states here on top, or those working in a Network Zone institution. And today we have Moshe, the Automated Fulfillment Network and a Network Zone Consortia. Next week, we're taking the week off. We've got a local holiday here in our Jerusalem headquarters. Then the following week, June 19th, I'll be speaking about how to manage electronic resources in a network zone using the inventory network groups. Then the following week, Moshe is going to be joining us again for using a shared user file in a network zone consortia. Then we're again going to have a brief break, and then we'll be moving to Consortia Central Configuration Dashboard. That's a new feature for Consortia being released towards the end of 2024. We're going to be seeing a sneak preview here. Then we've got Alma Analytics for Network Zone Consortia. These dates are to be decided. Maybe we'll even put that in here. I see we've got a gap. And we look forward to seeing everybody in these sessions. So without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing and turn this over to you, Moshe. If anybody has a question or comment, feel free to put that in the chat, and we will be monitoring the chat as we go along. Take it away, Moshe.
Okay, thank you. So let's just see that I'm able to share the screen. Okay, you should be able to see my screen now.
We see you and we hear you loud and clear.
All right, thank you.
See you loud and clear, and we hear you.
Okay. Okay, so first of all, thank you for joining us for a session today. We'll be talking about the fulfillment network and the automated fulfillment network, and all that in a network zone without a network zone. So we'll be talking about all the options that are there in a fulfillment network with or without a network zone. In fact, a theme that will come back to throughout this discussion will be that we'll be talking about fulfillment network and about the automated flavor of it. But the fulfillment network is a consortial feature that is not dependent on a network zone being actually utilized in the network. Fulfillment networks and the automated flavor of it as well can be implemented by institutions that do not have a network zone as well. So there are optimizations, of course, that a network zone does add. And through the session, what we'd like to every once in a while come back to is how this is done with a network zone, how this is done without a network zone, what additional options the existence of a network zone gives us, but we'll keep coming back to the fulfillment network with or without the network zone. So that's perhaps one first introduction that is important for me to state here. And I hope that you'll notice this as we go through this presentation. Um, we'll be talking about the automated fulfillment network, but actually we'll be talking about fulfillment network bottom up, because the automated fulfillment network is actually a layer on top of the basic fulfillment network. So as we'll talk through this session, we'll talk about the fulfillment network and what makes the fulfillment network work, and also about the automated fulfillment network as an additional layer on top of the fulfillment network. Because if we're talking about a fulfillment network, we're actually talking about a scenario where we have a patron institution, which is on the left side of our screen right now. Okay, so that's our patron institution. That's where the patron is registered. And on the right-hand side is where we're seeing the item owner. So that's the institution that will be providing the physical items that will be used for the fulfilling the request. As part of a fulfillment network, the patron information is copied over to the item institution, the lender institution, where the rest of the process for managing the request, the hold shelf, and then the loan will be managed within the lending institution using the temporary account that has been created at the lender institution. The patron account is linked to the source account at the borrower institution. And that's a basic fulfillment network infrastructure. When we come to speak about the automated flavor of that, we are actually talking about the same paradigm. So we have a lender institution on the right-hand side here. We have the temporary patron account that has been copied from the source institution or from the patron institution, the borrower institution, many terms to describe the same thing, over to the lender institution. And eventually a loan and request that is managed at the lender institution using that temporary patron account. That remains the same when we speak about an automated fulfillment network. The only and big thing that changes is that as opposed to the fulfillment network where the patron directly discovers a resource at the lender institution and directly requests that resource, in an automated flavor of the fulfillment network, the patron does not have to discover the specific holdings of the potential lenders. Instead, the patron is just placing a resource sharing request, describing the resource that the patron is interested in borrowing. And from there on, the, uh, uh, the resource sharing components at the borrower institution process the finding a potential lender, placing a request at that potential lender, and all of that goes through the normal resource sharing components of partner records and RODA templates and RODA assignment rules. All that comes to play for a fulfillment, automated fulfillment network, just as it comes to play for a classic peer-to-peer network. We'll see a demo of that in just a few minutes, but that's important to keep in the back of your mind that we are talking about fulfillment network as the basic infrastructure and about the automated flavor of this, which is the same infrastructure with automation built by using the resource sharing components, partners, etc. Of course, the automated flavor adds efficiency to the process, makes it work more quickly, more accurately, because the patron does not have to find the exact inventory, the exact item to request. The system does it for the patron. If for whatever reason the lender is not able to fulfill the request, the resource sharing process propagates the request on to a next potential lender without the patron having to worry about all of that being done manually. So the fulfillment network, the automated fulfillment network adds just that, automation to the process, and by that increased efficiency and accuracy. So if we start from the end of this story, the automated fulfillment network will be using the standard resource sharing components, such as a locate profile. As we can see in this capture here, that's a standard locate profile with only the type being a specific fulfillment network type. Other than that, it is a very a locate profile that is very much like a classic locate profile, allowing the locate to take into account whether the lender has an available resource, a requestable resource, and all of that ability to create an automatic rota that is fine-tuned to find a resource that exactly matches the requirements of the patron. Just to mention, for example, that the locate profile has these attributes that can say whether I want to request, whether I want to locate an available resource only, check item availability, and you can have, say, two partner records that are both targeted to the same lender library, but each one of them is linked to a separate locate profile, one with the check availability attribute on, and one without that check item availability attribute on. And then you bundle these partner records into two separate rotas or rota templates. One that will be all the partner records that are linked to locate profiles that check availability, and another one with the copies of these partner records that are linked to locate profiles that do not have the check item availability. And then with these two templates, which actually reflect a rota of my partners that have an available copy, and then a rota of my partners that don't have an available copy, but do have the copy that I'm looking for, it's just not available. And then in rota assignment rules, you can set up the resource sharing, the automated fulfillment network, to go first to the available items rota, and then to the non-available item rota, resulting in a workflow where the lenders that have available copies are always chosen to fulfill the request before lenders that have a copy that is not available are requested to fulfill the request. And by that, the automated flavor of the fulfillment network adds that efficiency to the workflow. All the available partners are selected before the non-available ones. The partner record is also very much like a standard classic resource sharing partner record. The only difference here will be the profile type, which is a fulfillment network profile type. But other than that, it's a standard partner record. And this just illustrates how the standard resource sharing configurations are relevant also for fulfillment network, an automated fulfillment network. Okay, so I hope that I've made the point that a fulfillment network with resource sharing elements on top of it, rotas and partners, makes up an automated fulfillment network. What I would like us to do next is take a look at a workflow of an automated fulfillment network, which will kind of help make more concrete all these elements that I've been talking to you about. So I'll be starting my process in Primo. I'm a patron logged into Primo. I'm a patron that is registered at the Alma University. That will be my Bohr institution. And my patron is already logged in. I'm starting here in Primo because in my demo environment here, I have a network zone. And therefore, my patron is able to search for resources that are found somewhere in the network, not necessarily at the patron's home institution. And this is, one of the important efficiencies that a network zone brings into this workflow, because the fact that I have a network zone enables the discovery to be shared here, and I can, as patron, find resources that are owned by other members of the network and be able to place a request on them. Of course, you do not have to have a network zone, a full-blown network zone for that. Having a discovery network could also serve the same purpose. It would also enable patrons from one institution to find resources owned by another institution, even though there's no full-blown network zone, just a discovery network with Primo on top of it. In my example, I do have a full network zone, but Discovery Network would work exactly just the same. So what I would like to do now is let's start through a workflow, and we'll stop every few seconds and talk about what we're seeing. So we logged in, and I'm using my Primo here to search.
Moshe, perhaps
On,
this is a good time just to stop for a moment. We got a question here. Do
Mhm.
partners have to have Alma for the resource sharing workflow to work?
So fulfillment network is between partners that are Alma. But as we'll see, and we'll actually demonstrate this in this workflow, when an Alma institution is using fulfillment network, it could it could communicate the same request with fulfillment network partners, and then expand the request to go on beyond the fulfillment network to non-Alma peer-to-peer classic resource sharing requests. We'll see, in fact, an example of that in this demonstration. So I could have my fulfillment network, which are all Alma institutions, because fulfillment network works between Alma institutions. But if none of my Alma fulfillment network partners are able to fulfill my request, the request can be pushed on to another ILL classic resource sharing that is not an Alma institution, or in fact, even be pushed on to a broker such as Iliad or another broker system to be fulfilled in there. So I hope that answers the question. If not, feel free to, of course, to post another comment or another question, and I hope you'll be able to see that in our demo. Okay, so I'll continue now. So I'm doing my my search here in Primo. I'm searching the network, and I'm finding a resource that is not available in my home institution, but I can already see that other institutions do have that resource. The Open University and the University of Knowledge do have that resource. And now I can place a resource sharing request. But you know what? Before I go into the resource sharing request, whoops, jumped further than I wanted. Okay, so before we take a look at the resource sharing form, I just want to mention that the other members' information that I see over here, these indicate that the Open University and the University of Knowledge also have that resource. This is many libraries find that very useful information for the patron, because the patron now knows that other members in my library's network have this resource. It's available. I'm likely to be able to get the requested resource because I know other members have this. But sometimes libraries want to remove the links from these indications here to prevent patrons from navigating further down into the specific, say, Open University inventory. Out of the box, these are linkable, and the patrons can link here, for example, Open University, and see exactly where at the Open University these items are shelved. Some libraries prefer to remove those links to create a more simple experience for the patron. The patron searched, found the resource, knows it's not available locally, knows somebody else has it, and knows to request it using the resource sharing link. Some libraries do prefer to enable these links, enabling the patron to drill down into exactly where the inventory is found at the Open University. This does support a service where the patron can find out where it's shelved at the Open University and just go in there and pick the item without placing a request first, because the patron found that the item is there shelved on the shelf, ready for pickup. So there's kind of a balance here. What service you like to expose? It's kind of a fine balance that is kind of we always come across this, right? The more information you provide, the more options you create, but potentially the more confusion you create. So it's really up to what you think would make more sense to patrons. Do you want to give them more information, or am I afraid of just confusing them by more information? Anyways, that would be a library. It's a library decision, and you can configure it either way. In our demo now, we'll continue on to use the resource sharing link to place a resource sharing request. We can see the resource sharing form that is opened up for us. And being that I'm a member of a fulfillment network, there are some special options here on this form. For example, I have the option here to select a pickup institution. Selecting a specific preferred pickup institution is an option because I am part of a fulfillment network where pickup anywhere is an option. So although I'm a patron of the Alma University, this drop-down will enable me to select pickup locations elsewhere. So I have options to select the Open University as my pickup institution. And when I do that, I select the Open University, I get another drop-down with the specific libraries at the Open University. So I can select which one of the libraries at the Open University I want to have my preferred pickup location. Then there's another option here, which is to select the preferred local pickup location. This will open up options listing libraries at my home Alma University. And the reason that this option exists is that although I've selected the Open University Central Library as my preferred pickup location, it may be that the available copy that can fulfill my request cannot be delivered to that location. Could be for a number of reasons. It could be that the available copy is found at the University of Knowledge, which is not part of the courier with the Open University and cannot supply for pickup at the Open University. Or perhaps another scenario would be where the request we mentioned before may be fulfilled by a non-fulfillment network member that is not able to send the resource to any library in my network, only to my requesting home library. So in that case, the patron will be saying, okay, I want to pick it up at the Open University Central Library, but if for whatever reason it cannot be sent there, please send it to my home library at the main library, for example, which is what we'll select here. And this will mean that if there's a fulfillment network member that can fulfill for pickup at the Open University, great, that's what will happen. And Alma will prefer to find a fulfillment network member that can actually deliver to the Open University Central Library. But if there's no copy at any fulfillment network that can deliver there, then the request may be propagated on to a member that will fulfill only for pickup at my home library at the main library. Okay, other than that, it's just my standard resource sharing. And you see that the patron now placing this request did not have to look at the exact resources at the Open University, the University of Knowledge, and it could be, dozens of other locations in the network. The patron just placed the resource sharing request and doesn't care about who's going to fulfill it, just about where it's going to be picked up. In my account, the patron will see this request in their request list at the home library, which is the Alma University for this patron. That's where my resource sharing request will be found. There's a list here for this demo patron. Let's jump around again. Okay. So here's my request, and we can see that the request let's find that request again. Okay, and we can see that the request is for pickup at the Open University, which is where I requested to pick it up. We can see that it has a request ID, which is the resource sharing request ID that has been assigned at the borrower institution. But you can see the preferred pickup location is the Open University Central Library. That's the pickup location that I have selected. And this is now a resource sharing request here on my list at the Alma University. So let's go back to take a look at how this is being processed now in Alma. So here's the Alma University, and I can use that request ID that I copied from Primo to find the request here and take a look at what it looks like here in the Alma resource sharing task list. Notice that I'm pulling up a resource sharing task list because on the borrower side, there's a resource sharing request. We can see that the resource sharing request is for pickup at the Open University Central Library. That's the pickup anywhere. And the partner is the Open University. If I do a send, the request now will be sent to the Open University, but unlike a classic resource sharing request that will create a lending request at the lending library, actually this send action, which I did manually, but could also be done automatically, of course, like any other resource sharing request, will actually create a hold request at the lender institution, as we'll see in just a few minutes. If we take a closer look at the resource sharing request itself, we can see this held by information. Because the request was placed through a network zone or a discovery network, the borrower institution has information about who in my network actually owns this title. So we can see there are 3 institutions in my network, and we can see which one of them has held by, which indicates that the item is, there is a copy and located, which means that the copies also can be used to fulfill the request. In other words, it's requestable available. You can see there's one institution here that has true for both. That's the Excel demo. That's the copy of my, that's the code of my Open University institution. That's the type of information that is stored here, which is also helpful if we want to understand how a request has been calculated. We can see the information about the network. And this is an option that the network zone or the discovery network enables the system to use. The nice part is if we take a look now at the RODA, we will see that our RODA actually has a few members, and this goes back to what we mentioned before. The first selection here is a fulfillment network. We can see the profile type is a fulfillment network. That's my fulfillment network member, which is where the request has been sent to be fulfilled as a hold request as a fulfillment network pickup anywhere type of request. But as you can see in my example here, the second partner in this RODA has a profile type of ISO, which is not a fulfillment network member. It is just another resource sharing partner, which could be Alma, doesn't have to be as long as it supports the ISO protocol, so that if the request is not fulfilled by the Open University Fulfillment Network partner, it could be sent to another non-fulfillment network member via the ISO protocol, which can be Alma or non-Alma. And in fact, the third partner on my RODA here is Iliad, so that if the request is not fulfilled within my nearby cozy fulfillment network and cannot be fulfilled by my wider ILL ISO-based network, it could still be propagated onto a broker such as Iliad to be fulfilled with the general Iliad lending strings. So you can see how I'd like to call this a hybrid RODA. The RODA can have different types of partners in there, reflecting the fact that I may have some nearby fulfillment network members that I have a close relationship with, further institutions where I have a less tight type of relationship with, that may not even be Alma, and then even a broker, which is kind of a global broker like Iliad. Okay. So we saw that the request was sent out. So the next step that we want to take a look at is at the Open University where the request has been sent to. Let's take a look at the request on the lender side. Now, as we mentioned, on the lender side, there's actually a hold request. So here's the Open University, that's our lender. And here, we'll take a look at the request monitor, and we'll see the request that has been pushed into the lending institution, and we'll see an actual hold request. So it's not a resource sharing request, meaning that the workflow for the lender is processing this request just like the lender would process any standard hold request. So if you take a closer look at this request, we can see that it's a request and that is a patron physical request. So it's a classic request. It's not a resource sharing request. We can see that it's an pick from shelf task. So it's like my normal requests. And we can see the creator information here, which indicates that the request has been automatically pushed into my lending institution via the automated fulfillment network. The system and the code of the institution indicates that it's been pushed automatically by the automated fulfillment network. We also see the fulfillment network institution code, which indicates the institution that has requested this, and even the request ID, the resource sharing request ID at the fulfillment network borrower ID, which is the resource sharing ID that we saw before, also recorded on this hold request. But from any other perspective, for the lender here, it's a hold request that has been placed for the patron, which is the linked account, the copy of the patron information that has been copied over. And from here on, it's just going to be a pick from shelf task for pickup at the central library, which is the preferred pickup location that the patron has requested. And the lending institution will just be able to process this. If I change my currently at to be the central library, I get the pick from shelf list, and I can just go on and process this with Pixlip and scan in and put a whole shelf and all of that normal fulfillment stuff that you would do for any request. So I can perhaps jump through this fulfillment process, and I'm scanning in the item that I picked from the shelf. It goes to the whole shelf. And just important to note that from this point on, the request will appear for our patron, but no longer on the Alma University list, because the moment the request has been fulfilled, it's now a hold request that is managed by the Open University. So the patron got an email saying, come collect your item. The email has been sent by the Open University, which is the hold shelf where the item is currently located. So the patron knows I got the message from the Open University. I continue to track my request here at the Open University, no longer at the Alma University.
Moshe,
All right.
perhaps this would be a good time here to stop for 2 questions.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I think I'll just share my screen and then you'll be able to see the questions more easily. And then the crowd will also be able to see the questions rather than me reading them out. So I'll read them out as well. So the first question, as you see here, could Rapido also be listed as your lender of last resort?
So Rapido as a broker, an Iliad type of broker, is not a lender of last resort. If you are, so I don't know who's asking this and in what context exactly, but you could have requests be sent through Rapido pods and then on to a last resort. Or if you're sending out to specific partners, you can use Rapido partners as peer-to-peer partners. So I'm not sure about exactly the if the person asking this is using Rapido. If you are, then you can have requests go through Rapido pods, and if not fulfilled through the Rapido pods, then move on to a Iliad type of last resort, or go on to fulfillment network partners and then through the pod, etc. All of that are options that you can, all different permutations of what you prefer to go first. Pods, fulfillment network partners, last resorts is all configurable.
Okay, and I don't see a follow-up on that question here coming in. If I do, I'll let you know. Then we have, just to clarify, the rotor we're looking at, so that's when you were showing the rotors, obviously, is that one specific institution settings, and different institutions in the network zone could have different, more fewer networks with different priorities, correct?
That's correct. In the network zone, you can set up a shared rota that will be shared with everybody, or you can have different institutions set up their own rotas, or you can have both. You could have a network zone managed rota that is shared across the network, but also have specific institutions set up their additional rotas that are just private to them that coexist with the network managed rotas.
Okay, and one more, I'll paste that one out here as well. Oh, I don't want to say people's names there. I want to keep it anonymous, so you can ask whatever you'd like. Okay, if you have a network zone with fulfillment network and partner institutions holdings displayed in your Primo, let me read that again. You have a network zone with fulfillment network, partner institutions holdings displayed in your Primo. Your patrons could play a hold request with them from there instead of a resource sharing, correct?
That is correct. If you do enable those links that I talked about, then they will be able to dive into the specific institution's holdings and potentially be able to place requests directly from there. This goes back to what I was talking about, that some libraries find that may be confusing to the patron. There are two ways to potentially place a request, which is why some libraries prefer to disable those links and just leave the resource sharing as the only option for placing a request. But then, you miss out on exposing holdings locations. So this goes back to what I was talking about, this balance about what you expose and what you don't.
Okay, we have still yet another one. Can you have Alma use the rotor order of an institution rota, then the network zone rota, and then an institution rota? Interesting.
Yeah, you can. So you want institution and then network and then another institution. As far as I recall, that's not an option. You can either say use the network zone rotas first or use them last. I don't think you can say, network zone, then local, then uh, um, but
Institution.
it's a little more complicated than that. Because there's the assignment rules and there are the rotas. If you're not using any assignment rules, you're just inheriting the rotas, the rota templates themselves, and you're assigning your own assignment rules, then each institution could do whatever they want. If you're using rules set up by the network zone, then you're using the network zone rules, and you can either say use mine first or use mine last, but not this kind of mine then network then mine. So it really depends on how much power, so to speak, you give to the central configuration to set up the rota templates and the rules, and how much you just let the network set up the templates, but let the institutions set up the rules. So again, this fine balance between how much you want to centralize your configuration and how much you want to allow the institutions to do themselves.
Okay, thank you, Moshe. I will stop sharing and take it away again.
It's just like the comment. It's interesting to see that the audience here is interested in hearing more about the resource sharing central configurations. We're kind of focusing on fulfillment network, but yeah, feel free to put these questions and comments as we speak. Maybe it's an idea for another webinar to talk about central configuration for resource sharing.
Okay, that sounds good. We're always looking for new topics.
Okay. All right. So this is I hope this demo was helpful
Are
to
you
show.
sharing again, Moshe?
Yeah, I'm working on resharing the screen
Okay.
again. It's gonna come in a minute. There we go. Okay.
All right, we hear
So
your screen now.
all right. Okay. So I hope this demo was helpful to kind of make this a little more concrete. What we're talking about. What I think I would like us to do next is take a look at what's under the hood, how the fulfillment network and the automated fulfillment network actually works. Um, and the reason I found this important to share with you is because um, I think it's important that we all understand how the system works. Um, it's important when we're setting up the network. It's important when you want to troubleshoot the network. It's important to understand how it works, to understand the services that it provides, the benefits that you can get from it. So we'll take a look at some of these configurations as time permits. And the way I want to take us through this is kind of think of this as layers, so that when you're setting up an automated fulfillment network, you're actually setting up a few things one on top of another. You're setting up a network, then you're setting up the way you want to share user information in that network. Then you set up how the fulfillment process, how the fulfillment attributes should be. And then the automated part of this. Actually, the automated part of this is what we talked about first, the lookup profiles, the partner records, the rota assignments, all of that. But we'll start from the very beginning of this by setting up first the network. In other words, who are these members that I'm set up to use a fulfillment network with. Now, as I mentioned in the very first minute of our discussion today, the fulfillment network can be used in a network zone network, but also by members that do not have a network zone. We'll keep coming back to, if you're in a network zone, you configure it this way. If not, you configure it that way. And this is the first example of that. What is my network? Well, if you're a network zone, then your network is your network zone. But if you're not a part of a network zone, then in your specific standalone institution, you have to configure a password in this menu here that will be shared with other institutions that are fulfillment network members that you want to communicate with. That password must be shared between different fulfillment network institutions. It's a password that the Alma APIs internally use to make sure that everything is secure and Alma institutions are communicating with one another following an agreement and sharing of initial information. So you must have that password set up. Of course, if you are within a network zone, you don't need to worry about this because the very fact that you're part of a network zone already means that there's communication between the different institutions of that network. No need to worry about the password. But, and this is important to note, you may be a network zone institution, and by that be member of the 30 institutions that are part of your network zone. But in addition, you may want to have fulfillment network relationships with other Alma institutions that are not part of your network. That is totally valid. By the virtue of being part of a network zone, you are part of the 30 institutions of your network. And then you can go on and configure the additional fulfillment network members that are not part of your network. We'll see that as we get to configuring the institutions. So when you're setting up your members, who are those institutions that I'm communicating with? Again, you may be doing this when you're part of a network zone or not. If you're not part of a network zone, then the configuration, of course, is done locally at the institution by using this menu where you configure fulfillment members. For each fulfillment member, you configure the code, which will be an Alma institution code, the URL of that other Alma institution, and the name that you want to use on your own screens when you're referring to that institution, as we'll see. So if you have, I don't know, 5 institutions that you want to have a fulfillment network with, they're not part of a network zone, you just list them here. Of course, every one of these 5 institutions has to have a reflection of the other 4 institutions in their setup for this to properly work. But again, even if you are part of a network zone, if you want to have additional members that are not part of the network zone, you would configure them in your local setup as additional fulfillment members in this link. If you are part of a network zone, then all that configuration is done centrally in the network zone. In the network zone, using the configuration option listed here, the network zone can configure, it's the concept of a network group. The network fulfillment group allows the network zone to actually be split up into a number of subgroups that have fulfillment network relationships with one another. The example I like to refer to is you may have a network zone that is kind of a statewide network zone with everybody in the state, but there is no courier that goes throughout the entire state. There are some couriers within the states, for example, an east side one and a west side one. And then you can have all are in the network zone, within the network zone, set up 2 fulfillment groups, east and west. And then list in the east group all the members of the network zone that are on your east courier, and on the west group, all those that are part of your west courier. This way you end up with 2 groups, and each one of them operates independently from one another. So the east ones have fulfillment network relationships only among themselves, the west ones only amongst themselves. And you can create all kinds of crazy permutations here as well. So you can have, institutions 1, 2, and 3 playing along with one another, but institution 3 having also fulfillment network relationships with institutions 5 and 6. et cetera, et cetera. So you can go on and create a bunch of permutations here. Obviously, the classic type of setup would be one group within the network zone with everybody that is part of the same group. But you do have these options to create these subgroups and create specific relationships where reflecting your couriers if you have limitations um, that are a result of having these couriers. So once you've set up the network and the members of the network, you've done your first step. In fact, you can go on and test your setup. And if now at the patron services workbench, the circulation desk, you have an institution dropdown, which lists all those institutions that are part of your group, part of your fulfillment members, then you know you've done your first step of the workflow of the setup correctly. You see those institutions um, in your job down, so you know that um, you have the right list. That's your first stop. If you've done that, get the first part nice and ready. Now about the users, that will be our next kind of topic. As we mentioned on our first slide, in a fulfillment network, there's sharing of user information, of patron information. Patron information needs to be copied over from the borrower institution to the lender institution. There are configurations on both the borrower side and the lender side that control how that user information will be shared. Some of this is done on the lender side, some of this on the borrower side. The rule we're looking at right now is what the lender configures on the lender's setup to determine how these guest accounts will be created at the lender institution. For example, when a user account is copied over, what user group will be assigned? For example, you have a user group, a dedicated user group that says guest accounts. In fact, you can create rules that would say, you know, you're institution C and you have relationship with institution A and B, and you can have patrons coming from institution A being assigned a institution A user group, and patrons coming from institution B being assigned a institution B user group. You may then use these user groups to create potentially different terms of use for patrons coming from different institutions. Or you may just want to have these user groups separate, not because you have separate terms of use, but just because for statistical purposes, you want to be able to differentiate between patrons coming from institution A or from institution B. So here you can set up what those user groups will be using rules that determine how to assign user groups. You can set up when these accounts will expire and when they'll be purged. That's stuff that lender institution can set up on their own setup. The borrower institution, which is the institution that is exposing their patron information to other institutions, well, here's where privacy concerns may require that you do some configuration that controls how you expose your patrons' information. So on the borrower side, you can set up these shared field setup to say what of my patron information I'm willing to expose to remote institutions. Typically, that will be minimal, and it'll be just the first, last name, and the email address. That's enough for a lender institution to be able to communicate with this patron about their requests, about their loans, and say you may be managing gender indication in your own user management, but you don't want to expose that to another institution. So you can just set this to false and not expose that information. So the institution copying your information will not have that information. Additionally, you can say what of your user groups are exposed out to another lender and what are not. This could be for a number of reasons. For example, you want to allow fulfillment network and automated fulfillment network only to faculty, but not to undergrads. So you can set up the undergrad user group to be an unexposed user group in this setup on the borrower side. And that means that the lender institution will never be able to pull information of users that are undergraduates. Therefore, these undergraduates will never be able to get fulfillment network services at the lender institution. They'll just not be identified by the lender institution.
Moshe, can I interrupt you for one moment just because it's timely? I believe it was on your previous screen, you had that refresh expiry date. And yes, here I see it on the fourth one in the output parameters. So someone asks, well, first they state it doesn't work in their case, but they're asking what the why don't you just give some background on that? They're asking why it might not work, but maybe if you just give some background, that'll already answer the question.
Okay, so this attribute is intended to say if the local expiry date has expired, and now the record, every time the patron is active at the lending institution, placing a request, checking out an item, Alma tries to refresh their local account with information coming from their source account, from their patron institution. So every time they interact, there's an API going back to the source institution, to the patron borrower institution, pulling information and trying to refresh the local account. If the local expiry date has expired and the refresh action finds that at the source institution, there's an extended expiry date, this is where you determine whether you want to extend your own expiry date based on this attribute, yes or no. If you're setting this to yes, then it means if your patron has expired, but at the source, at the borrower institution, there's an extended expiry date, you want to take that and extend your expiry date as well. No obviously means no, uh, but that's what it's intended to do. Extend your own expiry date if it's passed based on the source institution's extended expiry date. I hope this does work, and if not, then I guess we just need to take a look at the technical issues that you're looking at.
Thank you, Moshe.
All right.
One more question. If we're already on the questions, I see we've got 7 minutes left in any case. Is there any in-system confirmation option for patrons to approve their personal information to be shared with a partner institution?
Okay. So this is where there's currently a difference, something that we plan to improve on, but currently there is a difference between the automated and the non-automated flavor here. The non-automated flavor, where the patron directly requests, you can configure, I haven't listed this in these slides here, you can configure the get it to say you must, or if you want to place a request, you have to agree to share your information. And only when the patron clicks on that, they'll get a request option that will enable directly requesting from the lender institution. There's another settings parameter that sets this. And if it's set up this way, then the patron will not have request options at the remote institution unless they click on this and by that agree to have their information shared. In the automated flavor, being that the patron is not communicating directly with the lender institution when placing the request, using this does not involve an explicit consent at request time to say, yes, I want that. That would be something that you would have to manage outside of the system. And you could perhaps do this with exactly this next piece of configuration here, which is actually happens to be the next slide here. This is what we call searchable identifiers. And it's the way that you can allow specific patrons, not specific user groups, but specific patrons, specific people, to have the fulfillment network service, yes or no. The way you do that is that you assign a specific ID type out of your Alma managed IDs to say a patron must have this ID type to be eligible for fulfillment network services. So for example, in addition to my barcode and my student ID, whatever, there is an ID type that, let's say we call this Consortia ID or network ID. If I set up the network ID to be the only searchable identifier on this list, it will mean that only patrons that have a network ID can actually have their accounts copied over to another institution. So for example, you can create your workflow where patrons must sign an agreement to have their information shared. And only when they do that, you assign them a network ID. And only then they'll be able to have a fulfillment network service and of course have their information shared as they agreed. Any patron that does not sign this agreement you don't assign them the network ID, their information will never be copied, and they will not have fulfillment network services. So this is the way you can manage this on a person-by-person level. Who is eligible for the service? Only those that have consented to sharing their information.
Okay, I'm just giving you a 5-minute warning, Moshe, and I would like 1 minute at the end. So can you take 4 minutes?
Yes, sure. So
Thank you.
so I'll jump through some more. Um, the fulfillment aspects of the configuration involve setting up a relations, just like you set up between libraries within the institution, um, whether they deliver to one another, whether they can circulate for one another. You can set up the same type of relationship between institutions in a network. Again, if you're part of a network zone, you do that setup in your network zone. If you're not part of a network zone, you set this up at your local institution. It would say, I'm institution A, willing to deliver copies to institution B and C. My copies will never be requested for pickup at institution D, even though institution D is part of my network, if I don't have a deliver to relation with that institution. So this is where you set up what you're willing to share, or sorry, which institutions you're willing to share your copies with. And then within your institution, you also set up what of your libraries serve other institutions. You may have some of your libraries which are, the main library, which can receive items from another library for pickup. And you can have a reading room or a reference area, and you don't want any items from another institution landing at your reading room or your reference area to be collected there. So you could just select serve other institutions for the main library, but not for the reading room. Copies from other institutions will be sent over for pickup at the main library, but never be sent for pickup at the reading room because of this attribute. Okay, just one more word about the option to pick up anywhere in the network. You can set up a pickup policy, pickup location policy, just like you have a pickup policy that says in institution, you can have a pickup policy that says at any institution. And if you assign these to terms of use in your terms of use setup, then only items that have a terms of use that allow for pickup at any institution will be requestable for pickup at another institution in the network. And again, another institution in the network is only those that you have a deliver to relationship with. So this is very much like you have within the institution, the policy, the terms of use, and the relationship, the library relationships, exactly the same thing between institutions. You have terms of use as anywhere in the network, terms of use that assign this to different copies. So some of your items may be requestable in the network zone and some only within your institution. You do that through this policy and these terms of use. Okay.
Thank you, Moshe. As always, that was quite enlightening. Very exciting stuff. One administrative point, if I may, we have a session scheduled for, let me share my screen for a moment here. Actually, I can stop the recording now. So we will stop the recording. Okay.